What's up, guys? So I got a pretty funny story, I guess, of my own stupidity from yesterday. So I went to get gas for the weed eater, or not the weed eater, Jesus, for the pressure washer, and I tore the whole front end apart on the Audi. So I've got the whole front end tore apart, and I went to the gas station and had to get gas because when I got the pressure washer out here, realized I didn't have any gas in it. So go up to the gas station, get some gas, put it in the front floorboard of the car, and the vent cap is missing off of my 5-gallon gas can. I didn't realize it. So I put it in the front floorboard of the car, drove home, and my driveway is pretty bumpy. So it spilled a little bit of gas out of the vent hole in the floorboard of my Renegade. So I freaking left the windows down because I wanted to let it air out because I didn't want it smelling like gas in there. I got over pressure washing the front end of the Audi and forgot, it started raining and I wasn't worried about it raining because I was getting it wet anyway. So I was over here just pressure washing away, completely forgot about my freaking windows being down. And then it started pouring down rain. So I had to stop pressure washing, pulled the pressure washer up to the front porch, went inside, dried off, sat down. I was in the house for a good 5 or 10 minutes, and all of a sudden I jump up and go, oh shit, my windows are down. So I came running out here and almost fell and busted my ass when I ran out to the Jeep and rolled the windows up, but it was too late. The entire inside of my Jeep is soaking wet. I've had it parked out in the sun with the windows down all day and it's still freaking soaking wet. I really hope that nothing bad happens to any of the electronics, but it's my own stupidity. So I figured I'd share that with you. I was trying to get some work done on the Audi yesterday and wound up screwing up my I didn't screw it up, but I got it soaking wet, and it's probably going to be musty and mildewy and all kinds of funky smells in that thing now. So not looking forward to it, but hope you enjoyed that little story. Well, guys, I can't get a whole lot of work done with it raining like this. So, I mean, it's freaking pouring down rain. So, I don't know. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some work done after all this rain clears out of here. Okay, everybody. So, I've obviously pulled the fender off. Wanted to go over removal of the fender. I'll probably go over it when I put it back on. I'm not going to do the front end swap right now, but the way that you remove this, you have to have the front bumper off of it, and you pull. This is actually mounted over top of the holes or the bolts that hold the front of the fender on. So you have to remove these, and they're a T25, and you got a bolt right there and right there. Pull that off. They actually screw into this location and this location. Then you've got two T30s right there that hold the bottom of the fender in. Then you've got one going into the side of the core support, and then you've got 4 along the top of the frame rail. Then you have to open the door, and you've got a bolt coming in from right here. You also have to remove the fender liner, because then you have to remove this liner. So this liner is sitting in here like that. And there's 2 T25s that hold this in. So there's one right there, and then there's one down here. So you pull that off, and that allows you access to the 2 bolts that are holding the fender in. And then you've got a T30 here and a T30 here. Then, on top of all that, you have to remove this lower piece of trim off of the bottom of the car. Now, this can be a real pain in the butt if you're not careful with what you're doing. And this drain tube or the vent tube for your battery is actually clipped into that shield. I forgot to mention that, but it runs out from the side of the firewall frame rail and clips into the front of this black plastic tube. It clips in right there, but that holds it, and then it clips into this bottom piece that bolts over top of the fender, but we'll get to that. So in order to get this piece to where you can move it to get to the bolts, you have to remove all of these little bolts right here. These are T25s, and they're coming in from the bottom of the car. So they're coming in right there, right there, right there, right So you got to remove all of those. Then you also have to pull this strip up right here. You have to be careful with this because you can break it. I actually broke some of the clips when I was popping it loose. But after you do that, then you remove, there's a bolt going straight through here into the bottom of the fender bracket. So into the bottom of this bracket. And then you've got a series of bolts down the front of it right here underneath this strip. So you can see a couple of them right there. To take those out, you only need to go back about halfway back the door so you can pull it down enough to get to the screws to take the lower mount for the fender off. So then to get the lower mount for the fender off, this is going to be sitting in front of the fender. So you just pull that cover back and this will be sitting up on the fender like this. And it's got 3 Phillips head bolts that hold it in. Pull that off and then you've got 2 T30 bolts holding it in. And that's pretty much it. Once you take all that off, the fender will just pick straight up. Now, in order to get to this top bolt right here, you have to unbolt this little black vacuum tank, which I will not be using in this swap. So I'm just discarding it, but it mounts on those 2 studs right there. It's a 10mm nut. You pull those off and then you can pull this down, because if not, this is sitting in the way and you can't get a wrench in there. There's no line of sight. So you have to remove this in order to get the fender off. Now, what I'm gonna do, I wound up removing that other system completely. Now what I'm gonna do is this is the line. This is the line that broke on the car. That was originally on the 3.0. All right, you can see there's a junction right there in the line. Same place that there's a junction in the A6 line. It's just shaped a little bit different. But if I lay the 2 of them on top of each other, just bear with me for a second. This might be a little difficult. But if I lay these out, they basically run the same shape. The A6 is a little bit different shape. I may have to run it in through where the suspension goes, but I can try and reroute it and see what I can do. But that's what I'm gonna do, is I am going to replace this line with this line, which should allow me to mount the air cylinder or the vacuum tank right here in this general area. Okay, so I got the new line run. I've got it. All I gotta do is tie it in right there. I still gotta mount my tank. But I've got it run, and I ran it up through where the window washer tank goes, because this one's routed a little bit different. So it'll still hook into the original hook. I'll still be able to cover it with the fender liner. But I have it coming out right here. My tank will still fit and seal. I just got to push that down like so. Now, yeah, it'll sit down on there and seal. And then I've got it run up behind the back here, and it's hooked up right down in there. So let me move that tank out of the way so you can see it. So there it is, hooked up, just like factory. No cuts, no splices. All I got to do is put a hose clamp on here and put my tank on. So I'll update when I get the tank mounted. All right, guys, so now I've got the tank mounted. Everything's all plumbed up. What I wound up doing was using the original bracket off the A6. I cut one side of it off. I've got one bolt mounting it to the original vacuum canister that I pulled out of here. And it's sitting tucked nice and neat into this little area. All my fittings fit correctly. The fender liner still goes over top of it and doesn't interfere with anything. So now I'm gonna set the fender back on here, put the fender liner back in, and try and finish doing what I was doing with the rest of the car. What's up, YouTube fam? It's supposed to be a really beautiful day today, so I should be able to get a lot of work done to the car. I've gotten a whole lot done already. I wanted to give you a little update as to the progress that I completed yesterday. I still have not started the car, but I'm getting very, very close. So as of right now, I've got the entire front end put back together. So I got headlights, everything's Everything's final assembled. I still have not done the wiring. I still have not put it up inside of the ECU box. I still have not made my air intake tube. But I've got a majority of the rest of the work done. I've got the rear drive shaft hooked up. The exhaust is tightened up to the engine. I don't have the remaining rear section of the exhaust hooked up yet. That's my plan to do today. I also am going to run the remaining fuel line that I have to run. And I actually found out a different way of doing it than how I had originally planned. I had planned on changing the fuel pump to the A6 fuel pump and changing both fuel lines and all that, and doing a little bit of research last night, and I found an easier way to do it. So I'm going to change the existing fuel filter that is on this car from the 3.0 fuel filter that has a return built into the fuel filter, and I'm going to put a Mark IV GTI, so a 2000 model GTI GLS 1.8 liter T fuel filter on here. It'll mount in the same location. The fittings for the fuel pressure lines are still the same, so it'll clip right onto it. And I'm going to cut the fitting off of the old fuel filter for the 3.0. I'm going to use that as a nipple to hook up the return fuel line that I'm going to run up to the front of the engine. So I'll go into a little bit more detail into that when I get it all plumbed up. I'm not going to video it while I'm doing it, but when I get it all set in place, I'll do an update and show you exactly how I did that. And then I think the only other remaining things is going to be the wiring and programming the computer. So hopefully we'll get through all of this in this video, and this would basically complete the series except for first start. I know I said I was going to do first start in this video, but I think I'm gonna leave it, and I'll show y'all first start, first drive, and all that in the next video. So give you a little something that maybe be a little teaser for you guys to get you to watch the next video. I may do just a small crank so you can see that it turns over, but I really don't know that I'm going to put the first start in this video, just because I don't want to make it too long like I've said in my previous videos. But we'll see how it goes when I get to that point, and we'll cross that bridge when I get there. But let's get back into working on the car. All right, everybody, so I wanted to show you the fuel filter and how this is all working out. So you've got a fitting right here on the front, a fitting on the back, and then a fitting in the dead center on the back. The way that you pull these off, you can see there's a little spring right there. So you push in on the hose, press in right there with your thumb, and then pull up, and it'll come off. Now I'm going to pull this filter out, and I'm going to replace it with the Mark IV GTI filter, and then I'm going to move this hose, and I'm going to actually have it running basically like right here in front of it, and then I'll have it run down the rest of the car. So I did have to pull this splash panel off, and it's a series of 10mm nuts holding it on, and I'll probably have to pull the front corner off so that I can get it to run up through the wheel well. But that's what I'm going to work on right now, and I'll give you an update after I get it plumbed in. Okay, here's the difference between the two filters. As you can see, this one only has 2 ports, this one has 3. The direction of flow, so you need to make sure that you're putting the flow in the correct direction. Put your pressure line that was hooked up right here on this one, and then your front line is going to hook up the same. This fitting is the fitting that I'm going to cut out so that I can use that as a barb to hook my hose onto. I don't know if it'll be long enough, but I'm going to see what I can do. All right, everybody, a little update on the running the fuel line. So you need to remove this cover, which is mounted in the driver's side wheel well. It's mounted up like that. There is a T25 Torx holding this one in, and then this is a 7mm Allen wrench, and that nut will come off. All right, you also have this bracket that needs to come off, and it's held on with 2 10mm bolts and an 8mm nut. And the reason you have to take those off if you're doing it like me, is so you can run the hard line up in here. So here's my new hard line. I do not have it set yet. I'm still in the process of getting it set where I need to. Plus I'm gonna have to bend and cut, and I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with it. But what I have done, and let me get under the car. I apologize for the crappy camera work, but I'm doing this by myself. So under the car, I have opened these clips on here, and here's another one. And I have not opened this one. I'm gonna show y'all how to open these clips. So what you do, and again, I apologize for the crappy camera work. I'm trying to hold this in one hand and pop this clip in the other, so sorry if this is making you nauseous. All right, so all you do is pry that open, and then it pops right down. So now I'll be able to slide this line up in there and clip it into place. And then I'll cut it when I get back here to where it's gonna mate up with the other original fuel line. You can see it sticking down under the fuel filter right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this line, and it's gonna run up. Sorry. So I'm gonna take this line and I'm gonna run it up basically along the top side of the fuel filter if I can. I may have to just run it right here, but I'll figure out the best way to keep this line tucked up and out of the way so it doesn't drag anything. But then I will run the line straight up here and clip it into this clip right here. So just wanted to give you that update. After I get it clipped into place, I'll show you how I do the rest of it. All right, guys, so I wanted to show you why you had to take those two brackets off the front. So the reason you have to take it off is that clamp right there is covered by the one that has the nut, the 7mm Allen wrench nut. And then the other ones cover up right here where the fuel lines go up into the car. I haven't finished bending my fuel line yet, but I just wanted to show you where those covers go. When I get them mounted back in, I'll show you how they actually fit. Okay, so now I have the fuel line run. I've got it run through the original location on the engine bay, or in the fender well. It's running through the original cover and bracket and everything. It's running through all the original clips. And since I don't have the 3.0 line, eventually I'll cut it down here and I'll have it running like this hose. But right now I bent the hose to make it mimic the shape of the 3.0 line, so then I can have my fuel lines actually look somewhat clean when I get the air intake in here. But the covers that I had to remove, which they're going to be very difficult to see. Let me see if I can get the camera back there. So there's one of them. And that's the one with the two 10mm bolts and the 8mm nut. And then the other one, see if I can show it to you, is right there. But once you can do that, then you can clip it in to all the factory clips. I missed a clip. I thought I had that one done. That one's been giving me problems, but all the rest of them are clipped in. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to run it in the back. Once I figure that out, I will do an update. All right, everybody. So I tried to modify an original stock from a A4 to fit the cruise control from the C5, and it's just it won't work. This stock is too thin, and the shape of it's a little bit different. I thought it was close enough to where I'd be able to just replace the back and put the switch in here and have it right here, but it won't function because the switch is too thick for this switch housing. So what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm actually going to drill a hole in the steering column cover, and I'm going to mount that thing sitting into the steering column, and then I'll have 3 stalks on the side of my steering column. but I'll show you when I get it done. Okay, so I'm switching up my wiring a little bit. I had originally decided to run the crash signal through this connector on that green and blue wire, and I was going to run the vehicle speed input on that white and blue wire and the brown connector. And then I also need one more wire for the cruise control. So what I decided to do was I decided to put the wires back in this white connector. So I added 3 wires back into it. I still have the 4 for the cruise control. So here's the original 4 for the cruise control coming out of the other side. This red wire will not be used. I'm going to be removing it along with these wires. I'm not going to remove them. I'm just going to tape them up and leave them in the car in case I ever need to add any extra wires. And these are the additional 3 wires that I just reinstalled in the harness. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to, instead of cutting the harness apart, I'm going to take the wires right here and I'm going to cut them, solder them together, and then I'll tape it back across here for just these 3 wires. I hate doing it, but it's going to work out easier. I realize that the pin for the other side of this black connector and the other side of this brown connector, the pins out of the A4 will not clip into it. And I should have known that when I was doing the wiring harness, and I don't know why I skipped it over, but this is going to be a better solution. So then I still have my quick disconnect. I'll still have all my cruise control wires, and I'll have the additional 3 wires that I need that don't have terminal connections already existing. So once I get all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend these wires, all 7 of these wires. I'm going to extend them probably about 10 foot long, and then I'll clip this connector into the car, and then I can button up everything out here. I can get the cover completely mounted because right now it's just sitting on there to keep water from getting in there. But I can get this completely mounted, get all the wiring in there, get it all set, everything plugged into the correct connectors in the car. Then the only thing that'll be left is what's internal in the vehicle. So once I get that stuff, once I get these 3 wires soldered together and get these wires extended, I'll come back and I'll show you how I've got all this buttoned up and how I'm going to run it in the inside of the vehicle. Okay, this is just for my own reference in the future. Whether it helps you guys or not is besides the point. This is for me. So I've got black and white, bridge to black and white. I got red and yellow, bridge to purple and yellow. I have blue, bridge to black and yellow. And I have red and gray, bridge to green. I have brown and red, bridge to brown and black. Yeah, brown and red to brown and black. I have yellow and blue to purple and green. And I have gray and yellow going to solid black. All right, so now that I have my wires extended, here's my wiring harness. My wires are extended. I'm gonna go ahead and try and fit it up into the firewall where the original connectors are. They're up back inside of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this kick panel. First thing you got to do is remove the fuse cover. So it's right here. There's a slot to put a flat blade screwdriver or your key in there and pop it off, and that's how you access your fuse panel. But there's supposed to be a bolt right here. It's missing. And then there's another bolt right here and another bolt right there. Once you get those bolts out, you just grab the panel and pull it towards you from the top, and it'll release clips that are up here in the corners, and then the whole panel will come off. Then you have to disconnect the diagnostic port and the footwell light, and I'll show you when I get to that point. All right, now that I have the panel released, you can see the clips are, this one's actually got one that's missing, or no, it doesn't. It's because the bolt was missing. But you've got a clip right here and a clip right there and a clip right there, and they just pull straight out. Once you get that released, then you need to take your diagnostic port, and all you do is squeeze this little tab right here and the one on the back. So you've got that pull piece and this one. So you just squeeze them together and that port pulls out. Now to pop the light out, you just pop this side. There's a little tab on the side of it. So that little tab right there. So you pop that tab in and push the light through, and then you can draw the light out. Now I've got both of those loose, the whole panel will just slide right out. So there you go. I'm gonna set this up here on top of the back seat. So now we should be able to see where the original ports are coming through. So there's the plugs up there. So what I need to do is I need to run my white connector into the port up there, and then I'll run the wires down and I'll tie them off into these wiring harnesses over here and run them to their respective places. But once I get the wiring, once I get this section of the wiring harness in there, I'll resume the video. All right, so I've got the connector stuck up inside the housing. So this is the new connector right here. I know it's really hard to see because of the glare, but that's the new connector right there. I've got the wires run down along here. Got them coming up through here. And then what I need to do is I've removed the footwell out of the driver's side. So to remove the footwell, you just pop this piece right here off. It's got two spring clips holding it on. There's one there and one there. Pull that off, pull up the back edge of it right here, and then the whole thing will slide out and come out. What you're trying to get to is this wire right here. Now on a B6 chassis, it's going to be in pin 17 of the green connector. In a B7 chassis, it's actually going to be in pin 9, but it's still going to be a white and blue wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into the center of this wire. I'm not actually going to cut the wire. I'm just going to get rid of the insulation in the center. Then I'm going to spread the wires apart. I'm going to stick my wire in there and wrap it around, solder it, and then I will put electrical tape on it since I can't do heat shrink. But that's the only wire that I actually have to physically splice into the wiring in the inside of the car. The crash signal on this vehicle, even though it is not included in the wiring harness, it's not in the original red harness that I had on the vehicle, because this is the original red harness for this vehicle. The pin 6 is not in here, but it is in the other side of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wire right there at the back of the red connector, and I'm going to jumper my wire that I'm running out of this white connector over to that side of the red connector, and just basically move that wire from the red connector to the white connector. So I still have to solder these 3 wires together. I'm going to do that after I figure out. I'll probably do that after I get the rest of the other wiring complete. These will be the last 3 wires that I move, just to verify that I've got them in the correct locations. But just wanted to give you that update. All right, I want to show you guys how I do these splices without cutting the wire, because I don't really like cutting into wires that are pre-made. I know I'm already modifying the wiring by doing what I'm doing, but I like to minimize my intrusion as much as possible. So I don't know if you can see that, but what I've done is I've stripped the wire back just a little bit and split the wire open in the center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wire that I'm getting ready to bridge in here, and I apologize for the shitty camera angle. Let's see if I can get this thing aiming where I'm at. So I'll hook it up and then I'll show you what I did. Okay, so excuse me. What I did was I put the red wire through the center of where I had the wiring open, and then I twisted that wire around the outside of the blue and white wire. Then what I'll do is I'll solder this together. The blue and white wire has actually never been cut, and then it gives a more solid connection to the black and red wire. and then I'll just tape it with some electrical tape, put my kick panel back on here. You'll never be able to tell I was even in here unless you pull the kick panel off and you're studying it. But yeah, now the other wires, it's going to take me a little bit more work to do. I was going to try and use the original cruise control switch, but I don't like the idea of having 3 stalks on my... So I was going to use the original cruise control stalk, or I was going to try and use the original cruise control stalk. And I don't like how it looks with the 3 stalks on one side of the steering wheel. So much to my dismay, because of the way that they switched the design of the handles that are on the steering column currently, I'm not able to retrofit the old style in here without like cutting and fiberglass in, and I don't want to get into all that mess. I want to try and keep this clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a on-off switch on the next to the gear shift, and then I'm going to put the resume and excel switch on the other side of the gear shift. So let me turn the camera around and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put an on-off switch somewhere in this general area. I haven't decided exactly where I'm going to put it, but all it's going to be is just a button to turn it on or off. And then over here, what I will have is I will have it'll be well, I'll have to have 2 buttons over here. I'll have to have one for set, and then I'll have to have one for resume and accelerate. So I'll have 2 buttons here. I might even do all 3 of them right here. I haven't decided yet. Whatever makes it look the cleanest. I'm going to go see what kind of switches I can get. But basically all I'm going to do is drill holes right here and mount the switches right here. And I'm going to do, I'll probably do on off at the top, and then set in the center, and then resume and accelerate down at the bottom, because that would be the one that I would be using most common, would be resume and accelerate, at least for my driving habits. But when I get to that point, I'll show you how I do that. But that being said, I ran the wires that I need for the cruise control over the top of the steering column. I'm going to run them down through the back of the center console, and I'm going to have the wires coming out right here, and figure out what I'm going to do with the switches. And then when I pop this back down, you won't be able to see any of the wiring. I'll put the knee bolster back in and get everything hooked up. So the only other wire that I have left to hook up to get the car to where it will actually, I mean, it'll start and drive right now, but the only other wire that I absolutely have to have, so that I don't have any check engine lights or anything, as long as the engine is correct, is the crash signal, so that I don't get an airbag light. So I'm going to finish hooking up the crash signal, and then I will give an update when I get to doing the switches for the cruise control. So this is the beginning of what I'm going to be doing with the exhaust. I actually need to shorten it up a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is cut out the other section out of the A4 factory exhaust. I'll be able to use original clamps off of the A6. I'm going to have to get 2 of them, 2 additional ones, because the ones that are on the A4 are a bigger diameter for where it hooks up to the downpipe, but the rest of the piping is the same diameter as this. So I'll be able to use the original clamps on the downpipes going into these 2 connections, and then I'll get 2 more of those clamps and I'll put them here, but I've got to shorten this hose or these pipes up about another 6 to 8 inches each. But once I do that, then I'll be able to cut the pipe underneath the car and get the exhaust fit. I've got all the wiring done. The engine is completely assembled, except for one major thing that I did not hook up, and I could have swore I hooked them up, but I apparently didn't, and they were the wrong ones. So I went to make sure that my heater hoses were hooked up, and apparently I left the heater hoses for the 3.0 in here, and the the way they connect to the engine is a different orientation than the way that they hook up to the back of the 3.0. So you have to run the 2.7 heater hoses. And I could have swore I put them in there, but I didn't. So I had to pull these hoses out and fit the other hoses in there. I still don't have them hooked up to the back of the head. They're a nightmare to hook up. But I'm gonna hook those up. Still gotta finish my air intake, but all the wiring's done. ECU's installed permanently. Got the front engine covers on, all the air intake system except for the tube going from the mass airflow to the Y pipe is everything else is hooked up. I do not have any of the fan controls hooked up yet because I still have not decided how I'm going to do it. So that is the only wiring that is not complete in the car at this moment. So I don't know if I'm going to use this original fan control module from the A4 or if I'm going to use the fan control module from the A6 and rewire these fans to run off of that module. I have not decided how to do that yet, but I've got most of my interior back together. I'm still putting little bits and pieces together. I've got the wiring for the cruise control run over here. I do not have it hooked up to the switches yet. I have not purchased the switches yet. And then this is the wiring for the cooling fans. But like I just said, I'm not going to hook that up until I get the car running, and or at least until I get power on it, and then I can see how that fan control. I need to test that fan control module a little bit more to see how it works. The manual, the Bentley manual that I have for it, doesn't really explain how it works. It just shows the wiring. So I'm going to have to try and figure out the signals that get sent to it and see if I can duplicate those signals with the equipment that I have here. If not, I'll have to hook up the fan control module from the A6 and figure out how to bridge it into the AC control module for the A4. Either way, I'll be able to do it. I just got to figure out which is going to be less taxing. But that's basically it. I do not have the fuel line run to the gas tank because I have to drop the gas tank a little bit in order to get the fuel line to fit up through here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this fitting right here and I'm going to remove the plastic sheeting off of here, and I'm going to hook my return line straight up into here. But I got to drop the gas tank in order to pull this line out because it's pinched in between the gas tank and the body on purpose. Not from me doing anything. That's how it's made. But it's got a fixture holding it to the side of the gas tank, some sort. I don't really care about getting this hose out. I can't get the other hose up here because it's too tight against the body. So I got to get that hose fed up in here, and then I can pull the gas tank up with the mounting straps, and it won't matter. But that's where it stands. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get the car cranking today. I'm not going to be able to do the software of flashing the ECU and all that. So I'm gonna leave it right here where it is. The next video will be me doing the air intake, getting that finalized. I'll get the heater hoses hooked up, but I won't show that in the next video. But then once I get the air intake finalized and get the heater hoses hooked up, basically everything in the engine compartment is done. The only other thing that I would have left to do, I still need to get my engine cover for right here. This car didn't have it. And many of you are probably wondering where I got the thumbnail for all of my videos in this series, and that is actually from the previous car that I built. And I actually found footage of when I was building that car 4 years ago, and I think I'm going to leave a little snippet of that in the next video, just to show you. I've been doing this for quite a long time. This isn't my first go around with doing this swap, but I'm going to leave it there, and we'll see you on the next video.